I was known throughout the capital as the perfect, dutiful wife. People laughed at me, said I slept with books on women's conduct as my pillow. Every time Pei Huaichuan came home reeking from the brothel, I never said a word, just quietly showed up with silver to clean up his mess. When he knocked up a decent girl, I personally arranged the dowry, brought her home, and made sure she was well taken care of. 2 years ago, Pei Huaichuan met the love of his life and had the nerve to ask me to share the title of wife, like the legendary two queens serving one king. Everyone thought I'd say no. I didn't. I personally prepared the sedan chair, the ceremonial robes and crown, and welcomed Xu Ruoyun into our home myself. After that, Pei Huaichuan felt guilty toward me. So even when Xu Ruoyun constantly schemed against me, he never once lost his temper with me. Until New Year's Eve that year. He came home and saw me directing the servants to carry in white mourning banners and a brand new coffin, and he finally snapped. He tore up the banners and kicked over the coffin. Yunair is pregnant. Her health is already fragile. Are you trying to curse her? Keep that coffin for yourself. I knelt on the ground, picked up every shred of those torn banners, and struggled to right the coffin. I felt no resentment toward Pei Huaichuan at all. Because honestly, he wasn't wrong. That coffin was made for me. Seeing me stay silent, just quietly fussing with the banners and the coffin, Pei Huaichuan got even more furious. He grabbed me and yanked, but I held onto that coffin with everything I had. He lost it and slammed his fist straight down on my hand. Kui Yuaning, are you even listening to me? It's a filthy, cursed coffin, and you're treating it like some kind of treasure? Pei Huaichuan hit hard. I could feel the bones in my hand shatter. My whole hand swelled up like a bun, but even then, I didn't let go. Because he was right. This coffin was my treasure. The size, the dimensions, every pattern and carving. I drew it all by hand. It was an exact replica of the coffin belonging to a young man I kept buried deep in my heart. In our kingdom, there's a saying. If you want to be reunited in the next life, you either share a grave or use the same coffin. That's the only way to stay bound together. The only way to meet again. Sharing a grave was off the table. 5 years ago, he held off the enemy alone to cover my escape with the civilians. They never even found his body, just a blood-stained suit of armor that was buried in his name. I knew I'd never see him again in this lifetime, so I put all my hope in the next. That's why that coffin meant more to me than my own life. I gritted through the pain, clutched the coffin, and said calmly, Huaichuan, didn't you just say I should keep this coffin for myself? Then stop getting in my way, let me take it home. Pei Huaichuan stared at me like I was a stranger. Yuaning, you've always been so sensible and obedient. Why are you doing this to me today? He really misunderstood me. I wasn't trying to defy him, and I wasn't trying to make his life harder. I was just dying. Only 3 days left until the 5-year deadline with that person. I never managed to do what he hoped. Find someone to love more, find a reason to keep going. So I had taken a slow-acting poison. It would kill me exactly when the 5 years were up. And then, I could finally go find him. I just didn't know if he'd reincarnated, or if he'd still be like before, always standing somewhere I could see him, waiting for me. Just thinking about it, I couldn't hold back my tears. Pei Huaichuan froze completely, until Xu Ruoyun rushed over sobbing dramatically and snapped him back to reality. Honey, don't tell me you're going soft. She never cries. Putting on this weak little act? She's clearly up to something. You know my pregnancy is unstable. Do you really want our baby to be cursed and die? What a masterclass in twisting the truth. But me, I never cry. Because the year he died, I cried out every tear I'd ever have for the rest of my life. Back then, he was a blazing young general full of fire, and I was just the illegitimate daughter of a frontier governor. I fell for him the second I saw him. I chased him relentlessly until I finally won his heart. We hid our love from everyone and lived 3 blissful years together. Then in the 4th year, everything fell apart. The enemy realized they couldn't beat him head-on, so they went dirty. They gave up the territory of Monan, lured displaced civilians to settle there, then suddenly turned on them, planning to take them hostage and force him to surrender the city. He caught wind of it in time, rushed ahead of them, and drew the enemy away. That day, he begged me to get the people home safely and promised he'd come back to find me. I waited and waited until word came that he was gone. I sat on the city wall and cried for 7 days and 7 nights, nearly went blind. Just when I was ready to follow him in death, his second-in-command handed me a letter. That was our 5-year pact, and that's why I married Pei Huaichuan. Seeing me zone out, Pei Huaichuan assumed I was feeling guilty. Go burn that coffin. I won't have it disturbing Lady Xu. The servants moved toward the coffin, but I stopped them with a sharp shout. I pressed down on the coffin and stared at Pei Huaichuan with red-rimmed eyes. Pei Huaichuan, do you remember? Before I married you, we were complete strangers. But do you know why I insisted on marrying you? Pei Huaichuan paused. He'd asked me that question many times over the years. I never answered. Now that I was finally bringing it up, of course he was curious. Oh, isn't it obvious? She's an orphan with nothing. She just wanted to marry up. Why else would she put up with all that humiliation all these years? Let's be real. She's just scared of losing the protection of the general's estate. Pei Huaichuan seemed to buy it. A flash of contempt crossed his eyes. I pretended not to see it. Didn't care whether he wanted to hear what I had to say. I just started talking. No. The reason I married you is because it was your brother's dying wish. That's right. The young man I've carried in my heart all this time was Pei Huaichuan's older brother, the Frontier Army's young commander, General Pei Hang. Pei Hang always had a clear head about himself. He knew he was a soldier, that life and death could come in an instant. He also knew me well. He was afraid that if he ever died in battle, I'd follow him. So he left a final letter asking me to marry his closest younger brother, Pei Huaichuan. He said Pei Huaichuan was the only person he truly trusted, and that he'd raised him himself, so he was most like him. He believed I'd come to love Pei Huaichuan the same way I loved him. I understood exactly what Pei Hang was trying to do, give me something to live for. But he was also afraid he'd misjudged Pei Huaichuan and I'd end up wasting my life. So he set a 5-year deadline. If after 5 years I still hadn't fallen for Pei Huaichuan, I was free to do whatever I wanted. Back then, I did try. I genuinely tried not to let Pei Hang down, but no matter how much Pei Huaichuan resembled him, he wasn't him. I could pour my whole heart into caring for Pei Huaichuan. I could tolerate everything about him, but only because he was Pei Hang's little brother. I couldn't see him as a husband, so in 5 years of marriage, I never let him touch me. That's also why Pei Huaichuan started running around with other women, partly out of ego, partly to spite me. I just never expected that after all those years, he'd actually find someone he genuinely loved. Good. When I get to the afterlife, I'll have something decent to report back to Pei Hang. But Pei Huaichuan didn't believe me, didn't understand any of it. He just got angrier and angrier, and slapped me across the face. Yuaning, there's a limit to how far you can push this. I've let everything else slide, but I will not let you use my brother as a joke. I didn't blame him, because I knew exactly what Pei Hang meant to him. Their parents died when they were young. Pei Hang raised Pei Huaichuan from a child, taught him to read, taught him to fight. To Pei Huaichuan, Pei Hang was both a brother and a father. His death had always been a thorn in Pei Huaichuan's heart, the one thing you absolutely could not touch. Once, a servant gossiped behind closed doors about Pei Hang, said he'd charged ahead recklessly and deserved to die. Pei Huaichuan heard it and cut that servant's head off with his own hands, even knowing he could be sentenced to death for it. It was me who pleaded on his behalf before the emperor, on my knees for 5 full days and nights, that saved his life. I didn't want him to misunderstand me,